Transnistria, ever heard of it? I guess you haven't, but I didn't even know its existence until a year ago when I watched a Bald and Bankrupt vlog in Transnistria. So what is it? How did it come to exist? And why is it not existing state recognized by the United Nations? Transnistria, or now the Transnistria Moldovan Republic, is an unrecognized state recognized as a part of Moldova that controls the land between the Dniester River and the Ukrainian border. The only so-called countries that recognize Transnistria is the three unrecognized states of Abkhazia, Otarsk and South Ossetia. But also, Transnistria has a strong Russian military presence. Well, you might ask, well, it comes down to the history of this nation. The history of Transnistria is not long, as it starts in 1924 when the Moldovan ASSR was integrated into the Ukrainian SSR. Now, the only reason for this was Stalin's desperation for the region of Bessarabia, which at the time was part of Romania. On the 2nd of August 1940, the USSR demanded an annex Bessarabia as a part of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which recreated the Moldovan ASSR. Now, moving on to the 1980s, when Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of perestroika and glasnost let freedom of speech become far greater in the Soviet Union, the Moldovans saw this as an opportunity to strike and wanted either to become part of Russia or Ukraine, considering the high population of those two groups, or to become part of Romania, considering their close cultural ties. And in 1991, the Transnistria Moldovan Republic announced its independence and seceded from the USSR. But even though it was independent, it still had some ethnic issues, and those issues flared up in 1992 when there was a civil war between the pro-Romanian European Moldovans in the south of the river and the pro-Russian north of the river. Now, there was many border clashes between both sides, but it wasn't big of a civil war, and there was a peace agreement that was settled in the 21st of July 1992 and has been held since the present day. Now, why is Transnistria just not recognized as to be an independent state and is only recognized as a part of Moldova? Well, it comes down to the fact it's not an old country, and Moldova has always had this historical tie and claim over this region. But the Moldovan government has sort of seen the problem of this issue and passed a law called the Law on Basic Provisions on the Special Status of the Localities on the left side of the Dniester River in 2005, which established Transnistria as an autonomous territorial unit of the Moldovan Republic. But there is still some border disputes between Moldova and Transnistria, as Transnistria claims 15 villages that are controlled by Moldova, and the city of Bender, pretty funny name, is controlled by Transnistria, but Moldova wants dual control over the city due to its economic importance. Now, there's another factor to the recognition of Transnistria, and it has something to do with the Russian military presence in the capital, which is Tiraspol, as the Soviet 14th Guards became the Special Operations Group by 2010, has become a combined force of 1,500 troops. Now, even though there is still a Russian presence, the Russians do not recognize Transnistria and have also tried to withdraw their troops, as in 1995 the Moldovan government and Russian President Boris Yeltsin agreed to a troop withdrawal. The reason it didn't happen is the Russian Duma didn't ratify it, therefore it could not accept it. Therefore, the withdrawal couldn't happen. Now, there's one more factor being the recent war in Ukraine, as on February 2022, Moldova and Ukrainian forces reported suspicious movements of Russian forces in Transnistria. It was looking like the Russian forces were planning an offensive into Moldova. And even on the 1st of March 2022, the Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko accidentally exposed the battle plan into Moldova by Russian forces.
Спасибо этим ребятам. Они нас предупредили. И буквально за 6 часов до пуска ракет мы это обнаружили.
Transnistria is a fully presidential republic, and the president is called Vadom Krasnalski. Now, it's hard to call Transnistria a democracy, as it has a system where it empowers the president beyond democratic guidelines. And in 2001, the former leader Igor Smirnov was awarded with 103.8% of the popular vote. not very democratic sounding. Ideology of the regime is weird, as it has an economic policy of the 1970s Soviet Union of depression, but guys, it's aesthetic. But it has socially conservative views and has the same social policies as Putin. The demographics of Transnistria were reported by Moldovan police in 2015, and they concluded that 475,000 people live there, and the ethnicities that live there are 29.1% Russian, 28.6% Moldovan, Ukrainians are 22.9%, and the rest of the population are Bulgarians, Romanian and Belarusians. Now, this is the end of the video, but don't go quick because I have a Twitch and a Twitter. You should follow them. You know, Twitch I stream, not a lot, but sometimes. And Twitter, well, you don't want to go on Twitter. It's boring. You don't want to go on there. Anyway, goodbye.